Hey guys, today I'm going to show you something a little different here. This is a video I'm making for my tech savvy friends as well as other technicians out there that may possibly be faced with installing a Kenton MIDI kit in a Memorymoog. The manual that they send with this is not very clear in a lot of ways, so I've actually made my own personal updates to the manual, and I'm just going to show you point by point how this thing installs and how it wires up, because there's a lot of confusion. There's a few things in the manual as well that does not make sense no matter how I look at it, because there's no physical or mechanical way some of these notes would work, and I'll be addressing that as well. Before we start though, I want to always bring up that before you do any of these kits, know what you're doing, and make sure that your units are fully working Memorymoog, because you add a kit like this, you don't know if the kit's actually working correctly. So you don't know if it's actually introducing problems or if it had problems before this. So it's always good to start with a fully working unit. Something else I'm going to bring up too, which I've brought up in the past, but it's been a while, and that's use the Esd Control when you work on this stuff. Okay, I've got a strap here, which you can see it's connected to the chassis, which the chassis is still plugged into earth. And what this does, I've got a strap on my wrist right here, which you've probably seen in some other videos. And what I do is I connect the strap to my wrist, and that keeps me from having static charge in my body. So it actually it references me through a 1 meg resistor to ground, so it bleeds off all the static energy that's built up on me, and it prevents me from statically shocking these chips. It's basically static is like little lightning strikes to chips, and it can actually damage these things. And we're dealing with some Curtis chips in these things. So it's always wise if you I don't see any reason why you wouldn't, because it's only a $10 strap, and it can save a lot of latent failures. It can keep you from having failures introduced by touching the boards, and it's just a good standard. It allows you to handle the boards without having to worry about statically damaging something. So always recommend this, no matter what you're working on, whether it's a Memorymoog or whatever. And this is for you technicians out there too that may not use this principle. It's just good practice. But anyways, with that said, I'm going to show you how this thing wires up, go over step by step in the manual, things I changed in the manual to make more sense, and so hopefully this will help some of you guys out. So first of all, we're going to look at the manual here. I got the manual over here on my table, and as we open it up, first of all, here's the board. So here's your Kenton MIDI kit board, which you can see here, and that's kind of what it looks like. It's going to tell you when you drill the holes to make sure you line up the foot mounting screw, which is right here. But now this don't make any sense. Okay, so this is where we're getting this area where it doesn't make sense. When we flip it over, actually go over one page. That's just showing you the jacks. If you have the Plus model, it's showing you where to add the jacks instead of the little back plane. So right here, this is where it doesn't make sense. Okay, so it says remove keyboard, which is here, and it says remove top C key. Which reason you want to remove the top C key, I understand why they made that note. This is a very rare key to get, and really hard to get, this big large key. So they're just saying remove it to keep you from breaking it, is what they're saying. And then remove the rightmost two keyboard support brackets, which is this bracket here, and there was one right here, which I removed. And then it says relocate these. Now this is where it gets kind of crazy. It says replace the two brackets on the right end and replace the top C key. So what it's saying put the two brackets, which you can see the one I removed here, you want to put those on the end here and make them face out downwards there. Well, if you do that, that's not going to go anywhere. It's going to sit on top of this board, and you won't be able to mount it. So there's no mounting possibility with that leg supports there. So what I did, I just left that one back support here so it can mount here, and then here there's just nothing you can do. There's not really any mounting, a really good mounting design there. So it just got one less support. Now I will say the keyboard's still pretty stable in the chassis without that one bracket, but there's no way around it. When you install this kit, there's no way to install a bracket there. And so now when you install this board, there was a few things I had to do to the chassis itself before I actually mounted this board. One, I had to drill out a rivet that was underneath this piece of aluminum. It's like an angled piece of aluminum. There's a rivet that holds it in place, and I had to drill it out because it was making contact with the socket on the underside. So I drilled it out, and then what it's saying here to do is it's saying add a lock washer, which this all comes in the kit. It's a screw, a star lock washer, and then 2 nuts. So you put the 2 nuts, the board, and then you put a nylon nut on top. So as you can see here, you can kind of see how that works. You can see the 2 nuts on top of the lock washer, and then tighten it down. And the reason you want to use the 2 nuts is it gives you plenty of clearance under that board so it doesn't short the chassis. That's what that's all about. Okay, so now we move on to the other stuff here. So the actual MIDI wire up is pretty straightforward. There's nothing really unique there. They did that pretty good there. This is where it gets confusing, because originally they didn't label reference designators on anything. None of these have reference designation. So, and you've got several rainbow colored cables, as you can see, as well as some different color wiring here. So this is where it gets confusing. So what I've done, I'll just go and give you I actually I made reference designators for these sockets. So I called this one P1, P2, P3, P4, and P5. So I can reference in my mind where I'm looking, because otherwise it doesn't make a lot of sense. So first thing it says right here is this is locate P41, and it said originally right hand back of top left board, okay, which is really confusing, and I'm going to explain this in a minute. I labeled it digital board, and there's a reason for this. The Memorymoog actually has these boards named. This is called the digital board. That's the common analog board. Under here is the Demux board. This is your control glide board, your voice board, and then this is your control left and control right board. So by saying top left board, or by saying the top left board, I was thinking this board, because that's your control left. But what it's actually saying, it's saying digital board, and you want to find P41. It says locate P41, which is right here. So here's P41 right here, and then here's where it gets confusing again. It says purple wire, okay? That's all it says, is purple wire. And then it says a little note here, release, but if you look at the connector here, it says violet. So is it the violet wire? Is it purple? Well, it's actually a purple wire, but it's referenced violet here. And so what I did, I traced it down. I found it goes to P1 pin 16 on that connector. So flipping back over here, I found P1 pin 16, and then made a note of that. Now the black wire it's talking about, I really don't know what it's talking about there. I never could figure that one out. But anyways, that's something that I just never did connect it. But here's another place that's kind of confusing as well, and I see a better way of doing this than what they've got written here. I hadn't tried it yet because this is my first kit, and I kind of followed this as much as I possibly could. But in the next kit I'll be installing, I will try some things here to change this, which you'll understand in a minute. So it says pick up power for MIDI digital board, which is talking about their MIDI board. Also from the top left Moog board, the one with the battery on it, which is the digital board. Okay, and then it says black equals ground, and then red equals plus 5 volts. Okay, and what it's talking about this little wire here, which I didn't label this as a reference data. I just call it a power jack. And then what they want you to do, they want you to wire it to a chip on the digital board to get the plus 5 and ground. Okay, now I'm going to go and reference another set of wire here, because the orange and blue wire here is the plus and negative 15 volts, which they want you to tie to I think it's U10, 4 and 8 on this chip here on the back side. Well, I did it that way, but here's a much better way of doing this, and also this is for Kenton Electronics if you are watching this. Make a socket that plugs in right here to the Demux board, because there's already the power references right here in an unused connector. So you got the plus and negative 15, Actually, I'll go over it so you know exactly what you got on this socket here. So you got ground, plus 15, negative 15, blank, plus 5, and then another ground right there. So you can take the plus 5, plus 15, negative 15 all right here and just make a harness that plugs in there and then plugs into here. And that would clean everything up. You don't have to worry about jumping on a chip or any of that kind of stuff. It just makes it a lot cleaner. So that's the note here. And then it says, like right here, this is what I was talking about earlier. So it says pick up power for the MIDI analog section from the middle top board in the Moog. The one to the right of the one with the battery. See, very confusing. So it's the common analog board, which is this board right here next to the digital board. And it says pick up power from U9. I'm sorry, it's U9, pin 8, and pin 4. So the plus 15 pin 8, negative 15 pin 4, which is the plus 15 is orange, the negative 15 is blue. Okay. And so this is just a little diagram that kind of makes sense, but still, once again, if you're trying to wire this thing up, it's sometimes hard to follow this, especially when you got here it says violet and it says purple and it says release next to it, but you don't know if it's talking about this, you know, sustained release or really what. So the next area here, this is actually looking at the common analog board, and what it's saying here is there's a resistor value that can change depending if it's had the auto tune upgrade or if it's had some upgrades done to it, which is RX, which is right here. This will all make sense in a minute. What it's saying here, actually I'm going to show you just right here in the manual. This will make sense. So here's RX right here, and this referenced across this tracing to R66, which was not labeled. On the board, this will kind of make sense. You got U5, R66. So here's, let's see, here's U5 right here, which is a 3360 chip. And then here's R66 right here next to it. And you can see that tracing. Alright, right here, if you look right here, there's a resistor tacked on top because this one already had some upgrades done to it. So it actually has a 27K in this one. And, excuse me for a minute, let me get this. There we go, get the timer, shut off my watch. So anyways, what it's saying here is if it doesn't have this resistor tacked in, and you got this value here can be two different values, which is either that one that's added, the 24K is added, or the 560. So if it's just the original 560K, you add a 750K resistor, which they added in the kit right here. If it's a 24K, resistor, you just add just a wire. You don't go through a resistor. So REM is just a short, is what it's saying. And then once again, I made a note reference here, the yellow wire from P1 pin 14, which is the jack I labeled on the Kenton MIDI board. And then you also add a reference to U10 pin 6 here, which is a green wire from pin 1 pin 13. And then you can kind of see how this looks. Now I changed some things here. I labeled all these on the common analog board so this will be more clear. This is looking at the upper left hand side of the common analog board. So you got P27, R12, R3, R17, R8, which are all trimmers. And then you got R11, R2, and R10. So what I did here is I actually changed where I wired this in. And there's a reason for this. It's still going to the same point on here, but it's going to a resistor that has a upper tracing. So it's a double-sided board, so the tracing actually is on the top side, so you got a big solder plane that you can tack the wire on a lot easier than this resistor here. And so you take R10 and you solder the 47K is already on the wire, or it was on this kit. So you take the 47K, which is connected to the orange-black wire, which goes to P1 pin 8, and that goes to R10. And then your next wire, the pink wire from P1 pin 10 on R2. Show you what that looks like. So here's the orange-black wire, and you can see I tacked it on the top side of that tracing of R10, and then R2, which is the pink wire, is tacked to the bottom side of R2. So that's how that works. Okay, so that's that area. Now the next thing it talks about here is you add the yellow wire here into the resistor to P1 pin 14, and then there's another change that you have to make, which is you have to pull R47. You remove R47 altogether, which wasn't labeled, and then you add a 3K and a 36K, and you make an arrangement. What I did, I made an arrangement like this. It's not a flux capacitor. It's two resistors and the Schottky diode that they've added to the wire, and I'll show you how that looks. But it goes to P1 pin 13. I'm sorry, that actually goes to P1 pin 9 right there. It's the pink black wire. So just show you what that looks like, and I'll show you exactly what I'm trying to explain here in this diagram. So what you've got is I actually made these two resistors here stand up, as you can see. And so there's your 3K, your Schottky diode, and then the other value resistor, which was 36K. So there's your 36K here below it. And then that's how I did that. So that's wired up like that. And of course then you can see that yellow wire I was talking about earlier. But this is the pink black wire. As you can see, it's got a black stripe on it. And that goes to the Schottky diode. So that's how that works. So that's that connection. That's the changes you have to make there. And then we go on up here, and then this is where it has more confusion, because it says unplug both ends of existing keyboard connector, which is what it's talking about there. It's talking about this connector here, which actually goes up here to P48A and P48B. So that's how you unplug those. And then it says plug in the 16-way Molex into the keyboard plus to the other end into the MIDI digital board as shown in drawing 3, which drawing 3 is referring back to this over here. So if we go back over here, here's drawing 3, okay, and see it just says to keyboard and then to synth. So P5 is what I labeled there, to synth, but it doesn't really show you how to connect the board or to the digital board. So I'm going to explain this. Okay, so we go back over here, and it says plug the two 8-way connector into the Moog digital board. So I actually said digital board here, which makes sense. The connector with the striped wire goes to the back heatsink side, and the other to the front keyboard side. Okay, that don't make a lot of sense. But what it's saying the striped wire goes to P48B, and the solid wire connector goes to P48A. Okay, and it goes, and I made a note here, to P5 on Kenton kit. So P48B, the reason they say striped wire is because it actually has the red wire in it, as you can see there. So that's P48B, and then right down here is the other one that's not striped at all, and it goes to P48A, and that's how that works. And then I've just got these hanging because in case the kit ever needs to be diagnosed, you can plug this back in and go straight from here to the digital board like a factory. So that's how that works. That's the connector, and then that plugs in over here to P5, which I label on this board as well. So that's P5, and that's how that works. Now the next area here, this was a little confusing as well. But it says, all it says is ribbon connects to underside of chips along the numeric keypad in the lid of the Moog, which is the control left board. Okay, and it gives you this layout here. And what it's actually wanting you to do is it's when you go to P3, which I labeled. It just has a color chart, but you don't. It's hard to follow. So what I did, I labeled these. U7 pin 10 goes to the gray wire, which is P3 pin 3, which on this board here I labeled this is P3. So pin 3 is 1, 2, 3, which is the gray wire, which goes up here behind the top control left board, which is U7 pin 10. So you get the idea how this works. And basically, as long as you follow this little chart here, you'll be okay, because the colors are in order all the way down the chart here. So you got U7 pin 10, which is P3 pin 3, U7 pin 6, which is violet, which is P3 pin 4, and they left these others just kind of blank because they knew all the colors would go in order. But I went on to label this just to help my mind once again to be clear on this. So U7 pin 4 goes to P3 pin 5, U7 pin 2 goes to pin 3, pin 6. Okay, then you change chip locations. You go to U6, pin 9, which is P3, pin 7. U6, pin 6 is P3, pin 8. U6, pin 5, which is the red wire, which is P3, pin 9. And U6, pin 19, which is brown, P3, pin 10. So you can kind of see how this looks. So here's U6 right here, and you can see the color wiring added, and then that comes down here and all plugs in right here to P3, which I labeled. So that's how that works. And then that's really about it. And then this is just more diagrams showing you U7, U6 here. But that's really it. And I've already tested this unit, so I know it works. So I know I know this is actually the correct way to install it. Now Kenton did make a note that they're constantly changing things, so there's a chance if you have a MIDI kit that may not match what I'm addressing here. But I just want to make sure I address this because this was really confusing, because it gives you kind of an idea of what you're looking at, but it doesn't give you actual reference designators. So like for example 39K, but it's R47 that you're looking at. So I actually labeled the resistors. And then right here, I don't know if I brought this up, but you got a green wire that goes on the bottom rail here of R77, 76, and 78, which is right here, and it goes to P1 pin 13, which is right here. So you can just kind of get an idea how that works, and that's above U10 on the common analog board. So hopefully that helps you out a little bit, guys. I know that was a little bit of confusion on my half, because it's the first time I've ever installed one. But you know, I've already tested this. Like I said, it works. And of course the MIDI jacks, if you follow the MIDI jack labeling on there, it's exactly the same. They give you the color wiring. It goes to watt jack, and so that's all straightforward. And that, of course, that comes down here to the label. I label this one P2, so it goes to P2, which is this one. And so that's how it works. The only issue I have found also is that the keyboard wire is almost too short. I mean, I have to really stretch this wire to line up the screw holes on the keyboard. So I might be adding a little extra wire to this because they used a larger gauge wire to go into this socket. But I think if they had added just a little extra, maybe another inch of wire on here, it wouldn't be quite as strained. So I might actually replace these wires and then add a little extra and then solder it back into the ribbon just to make it have a little bit more length on it. But anyways, guys, I hope this helps some of you technicians out there, and I hope this helps too with Kenton Electronics. I hope this helps maybe address some things for people that might be asking you questions on these kits. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Take care, and hope this helps you guys out. Take care.